Hello, everyone. My name is Brenda Tracy. I am a registered nurse. I'm a single mother, and I'm a rape survivor. In 1998, my best friend called and asked if I would go over to her boyfriend's apartment with her. He was having his brother in town, and she didn't want to go by herself. So I went with her. I went to this apartment that I had been to before, and when we got there, her boyfriend was there. He was a football player for Oregon State University. His brother from California had come. He was visiting, and he brought a friend. The roommate was also a football player, and then another player showed up that evening. I didn't normally drink back then. I have a history of alcoholism in my family and dealt with some domestic violence issues with my children's father when he would drink. So when I was first asked if I wanted a drink, I said no. But then my friend said, "It's okay, you're safe here. You can drink, you can crash on the couch if you have too much. It'll be fine." And so I had a drink. It was a mixed drink. I remember drinking about 4 ounces of it, a small amount. And about 20, 30 minutes later, I started to feel really flushed and kind of warm. And then I started to feel a little dizzy. And then the room began to spin, and I realized, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out. And right before I did pass out, I looked across the room, and my best friend and her boyfriend were sitting across from me, and I remember her boyfriend looking directly at me, and he stood up and he took my friend to the back bedroom, which meant that I was then left in the living room with the other 4 men. I did pass out, and the first time I came to some consciousness, I became immediately aware that I was laying on the floor on my back. I was naked, and I was unable to move my arms or my legs. And I was being sexually assaulted by all 4 men. I remember as I was laying there, unable to move, trying to stay conscious, they were laughing. They were high-fiving each other over my body. They were congratulating each other on their performance as they each took turns raping me. My attack lasted for about 6 hours. I vomited during my attack. They used a flashlight on me. They used an alcohol bottle on me. And I don't know what else they did to me because I was unconscious for most of it. And I don't want to know. I don't want to remember everything. And I hope that I never do, because what I do remember is permanently seared in my brain, and it never goes away. Even though my rape happened almost 20 years ago, it still lives with me in here and here. The pain never fully leaves, and it affects everything about you. The next morning, I woke up, I found my clothes, we left. I went to the hospital, I got a rape kit done, I went to the police, I filed a report. I did everything that a good survivor is supposed to do to pursue justice. And because 2 of the men played football for Oregon State University, the worst moment of my life became a public news story. And the backlash was swift and it was severe. The first thing my community did was call me a liar. They wanted to know who I was and why I was trying to ruin these young men's lives. So not only was I the victim of a crime, but now I was a perpetrator. I began receiving death threats. Friends turned on me, abandoned me, called me a liar and a slut. I couldn't handle the pressure. The DA told me that I didn't have a good case. It was a he said, she said. And under all of the weight of that, I decided to drop the charges. Because what was the point if I couldn't win? Why would I go through it? I was told I would have to go through 4 trials. It could take years, and my rape kit and all the photos of my entire body would be made public. So I dropped the charges, but I went to the school and I reported to Oregon State University. I wasn't a student, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knew what happened so that they could make sure it didn't happen to anyone else. And when I dropped the charges, and after going to school, that was a new story too. And this time my community said, see, we told you she was a liar. If she was really raped, she would have prosecuted. The football coach did an interview, and he was asked about his players and what happened, why they were arrested and the charges being dropped and everything around that. And the coach at the time, who was Coach Mike Riley, who's at Nebraska now, said, these are really good guys who made a bad choice. And he gave them a 1-game suspension. Mind you, this entire time, as everyone is talking about my life, I'm reading these stories. I'm hearing everything that's being said about me. So given all of that information, I did the best I could to move on with my life. And for the next 16 years, I struggled. I dealt with depression, I dealt with PTSD, I had a borderline eating disorder, and mostly I just wanted to die. Those men had ruined me. They had ruined my body. They had broken my spirit. They had taken a piece of my soul, and I didn't want to exist. I didn't want to be here anymore. But I had to stay alive because I had my children that I had to take care of. In 2014, desperate for change, desperate to just want to wake up one day and not want to die, I shared my story with a reporter. And people say it was an act of courage, but it wasn't. It was an act of desperation. I just wanted something different. And so I shared my story, and I told the reporter to put my name and my face on it because I was tired of living in this self-imposed prison of shame and silence. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to be like all of you. So in 2014, my name and my face was on a story. And that day I became Brenda Tracy, single mother, registered nurse, rape survivor. And that was my first moment of feeling okay about myself. Because I didn't feel ashamed in that moment, and I don't today either. And this time my community loved on me. They did call me a hero, and they said I was courageous. Survivors reached out to me and said, thank you. Me too. It happened to me too. And people wanted to know what happened back in 1998. So an investigation was done by the reporter who did my story. The president of Oregon State University came forward publicly and apologized to me and said he would look into what happened to the men. Coach Mike Riley hit the message boards of my story and apologized. And what I found out is that in 1998, Oregon State Athletic Department was over $1 million in debt, and they were trying to renovate their football stadium. And a rape scandal wasn't going to help with the money donations that they needed to renovate their stadium. So the police and the DA and the university president got together and they had a discussion about me. And what I found out is that in 1998, the DA said I had a he said, she said case and I couldn't win it. But the DA had taped confessions from all 4 men. And the police didn't test my rape kit. They threw it in the trash. 3 years before the 6-year statute of limitations was up. And the university president said, don't talk about Brenda. And nobody did. No one said my name. No one talked about it. No one said this is wrong. We should help her. And that football stadium was renovated a year later. It worked. They got all that money from the Reeser family. And Parker Stadium, that stood there in 1998, is now Reser Stadium. And what I know about the worth of my life, what I know is that my life isn't priceless. I have a price tag. My life is worth the cost of that stadium. And I am acutely aware every time I see that football stadium that that stadium was built off of my back and my pain and my children's pain. And we see this across the country. We see people prioritizing football and games and things over people's lives. So when I found this information out, I went to a lawyer and I said, what can I do and who can I sue? This can't be right. And my lawyer sat me down, and I could tell that the three of them sitting there at the table were really uncomfortable, and they had to deliver the news to me that there was nothing I could do. DAs have immunity. They get to pick and choose what cases they take. There was no law on the books about rape kits or maintaining evidence. And I wasn't a student, so the university president didn't do anything wrong either. Title IX, Clery, none of those things protected me. And today, that's what I have to live with. Those men will never do a J in jail, ever. Everyone knows what they did. They know what they did. No one will ever serve time for what happened to me. And that's the reality I live with today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda, for having the courage to come forward this morning and share your story with all of us. I don't think you know how much your story gives voice to those who have been silenced. Thank you again. Good morning, and welcome to the 8th annual Voices of Men Call to Action Breakfast. My name is Lynn Beyer. I am the Executive Director of Reach Counseling and one of the founders of Voices of Men. 10 years ago, Reach, Sexual Assault Crisis Center, Harbor House, Christine Ann Domestic Abuse Services began Voices of Men in collaboration with our community allies. And we continue to partner with and guide this work.
I am Amy Flanders, the Executive Director of the Sexual Assault Crisis Center. Our two agencies have been providing sexual assault crisis services to the greater Fox Valley community for 80 years combined. The reason that Brenda's story is so important is that she speaks for victims who have been shamed into silence by the systems that make up our schools, governments, corporate America, and even within our community. Over 90% of victims know their perpetrators. The shame and victim blaming are part of why they remain silent. In 2016, over 800 victims received crisis and counseling services from our two agencies. The need is real right here, and we are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The hashtag #MeToo campaign that grew out of the sexual abuses we know about in Hollywood and in Washington encourages victims to come forward and tell their stories of rape and assault. This morning, we are gathered here to encourage and challenge the men in this room to listen to women's stories. We deserve that validation. To support our healing process. No one can heal alone. Take action against the status quo, and that calls for your courage. Violence against women and children are happening now here in the Fox Valley. And we need to change this from a women's issue to a men's issue. For this to happen, we ask you to be brave and to take a stand with us. And that may be uncomfortable. At this morning's breakfast, you will learn more about the ways that you can stand up and make a difference here in the Valley.
We have advocates from our agencies here today wearing teal and purple bandanas. They are seated at the doorways and throughout the room. Advocates, can you please stand? The advocates are for anyone who feels affected by today's discussion. If you feel the need to speak to an advocate, please seek out one of these people for support, either during or after the program. Thank you for joining us.
You're acting like a girl.
No one likes a tattletale.
Grow a pair.
You're gonna lose your man card.
Boys don't cry.
Bros before hoes.
Stop with the emotions.
You're acting like your sister.
That's so gay.
No fear.
Act like a man.
Don't be a bitch, dude.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
My name is Steve, and I'm 5 years old. Oh. And even though I am a boy, I like to play with my older sister. Sometimes we play with dolls, and sometimes we play catch, and sometimes I play with dolls all by myself. But my parents look at me funny.
You're acting like a girl.
I'm not acting like a girl, I'm acting like a kid. So what if I like girly things? As long as that makes me happy, right? So what if sometimes I cry? When my sister cries, they hug her and they hold her. And when I cry, they yell at me and they tell me to man up.
Rub some dirt on it.
Man up.
Some people called me gay. I don't understand. I don't even know what that means. All I know is that whenever I enjoy something that my sister enjoys, my neighbor kids call me gay. It feels bad.
You're acting like a
No
girl.
one likes a
You're
tattletale.
gonna lose
Bros
your
Boys
man
don't
card.
cry.
Stop with the
You're
emotions.
acting like
gay.
your sister.
No
Don't be a
fear.
Act like a man.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Man.
Man up.
I'm 17 years old, and I'm a lineman for the football team. Hoo-ah! I'm a good athlete, but I am only human. So I missed a block. We lost the championship game, and my teammates didn't say anything, but I knew. In the ride home, in the car with my dad, mostly silence, except
No son of mine gets beat, gives up. Your sister could have made that block. You were playing like a girl.
why do I feel so crushed? Is there anything wrong with playing like a girl? Why is it every time I'm acting like a girl, I'm doing something wrong? It doesn't make sense.
He doesn't need a jock. He wears panties.
There it is again. It makes me feel weak, like less of a man. Sometimes men make mistakes, just like women do. We're all only human.
You're acting like a
No
girl.
one likes a
You're
tattletale.
gonna lose your man
Boys
card.
don't cry.
Stop with the
That's so
You're
emotions.
acting like your sister.
Show no fear.
Act like a man.
Man up.
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 November 7th. It's my birthday today. 52 years old. My present? I got an email from the office telling me that my job had been eliminated. I have a wife. I've got 2 kids. I'm supposed to be the man of the household, the breadwinner. What if I can't pay for my daughter's school clothes? What if I can't afford my son's tuition? What if we lose our home?
Real men don't cry.
I can't cry. Not in front of my family. Hell, I don't know how. Instead, I feel angry. I want to go over to the office and see my boss and I don't know. My wife offers to get a second job.
Men don't ask for help.
You're gonna lose your man card.
No, we could use the money, but no, I can do this on my own. Men don't ask for help. We man up, even if it kills us.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Ten responses to the phrase, man up. 1, because I don't want to curse in front of 1,000 people, let me just say this. I know what you're trying to say, right? I know that you're trying to say, handle your business, right? Gather your strength and do the thing that needs to be done. I get that. But anyone can do that, of any gender. So why do we make it about gender? Why don't we just say that? Why do we say man up? 2, if you want to question my masculinity, like a schoolyard circle of curses, like a sword fight with lightsaber erections, save your breath, because contrary to what you may believe, not every problem can be solved by growing a pair. You cannot arm wrestle your way out of depression. The CEO of the company that just laid you off does not care how much you bench, and I promise there is no light beer in the universe full-bodied enough to make you love yourself. 3, man up. Okay, that's that new superhero, right? Like mild-mannered supplement salesman Mark Manstrong says the magic words man up and then transforms into the 5 o'clock shadow, the massively muscled, deep-voiced, leather duster-wearing Superman who defends the world from, I don't know, feelings. 4, of course, why fight to remove our chains when we can simply compare their lengths? Why step outside the box when the box has these awesome flame decals on it? We men are cigarettes. Right? Dangerous and poisonous. 5, you ever notice how nobody ever says woman up? They might imply it, but women and the women's movement figured out a long time ago that being directly, explicitly ordered around by commercials, magazines, music, and media is dehumanizing. When will men figure that out? 6, the phrase man up suggests that competence and perseverance, both good things, are also uniquely masculine. That women, not to mention gender nonconforming people, not to mention any man who doesn't, eat steak and drive a big truck and have lots of sex with women are nothing. More than anything, though, it suggests that to be yourself, whether you wear skinny jeans or rock a little eyeliner or drink some other brand of light beer or write poetry, will cost you. 7, how many boys have to kill themselves before this country acknowledges the problem? How many women have to be assaulted? How many trans people have to be murdered just for being who they are? We teach boys how to wear the skin of a man, but we also teach them how to raise that skin like a flag and draw blood for it. 8, boy babies get blue socks, right? Girl babies get pink socks, right? What about purple? What about green? What about orange, cerulean, black, tie-dyed, buffalo plaid, rainbow, 9? I want to be free to express myself. Man up. I want to have meaningful emotional relationships with my brothers. Man up. I want to be weak sometimes. Man up. I want to be strong in a way that isn't about physical power or dominance. Man up. I want to talk to my father about something other than sports. Man up. I want to be who I am. Man up. 10, no. So yeah, thank you to Brenda Tracy, thank you to the skit, and everyone who's put this together. Very briefly, my name is Kyle Tran-Myrie. My stage name is Guante. I was born in La Crosse. I live in Minneapolis. My work is I travel to colleges and conferences and high schools and use poetry as an entry point into what are hopefully deeper, more critical conversations about important issues, right? And people sometimes say, like, that must be hard because, one, like, nobody likes poetry, and two, nobody likes to have conversations about racism and sexism and gender violence and challenging traditional notions of masculinity and all this stuff. You must get, working with high school students, you must get a lot of, like, blank stares and dirty looks. And the thing is, like, I don't. Everywhere I go, I find young men who are ready to have this conversation, who are not just ready, but who are hungry to have this conversation. Because as the skit that you saw showed so powerfully, this idea that there's only this one incredibly rigid, strict way to be a man is an incredible burden on our shoulders. We don't actually get much from it. It hurts us. And as Brenda Tracy's story showed, it definitely doesn't just hurt us. It hurts the people around us. It hurts the people we love, especially women. And so the poem that I just shared, and I'm going to share some other stuff later, but it's hopefully an entry point into a conversation about how that hurt, that pain, and that violence is rooted actually in little things, in our language, in our small habits, in all of the little decisions that we make without ever even thinking about them. It's the idea that gender violence isn't just the murder and rape of women. It's also about the larger culture that gives those kinds of violent crimes space to grow, to fester. And that means that it isn't just about the worst of the worst, right? The serial sexual harasser or the violent rapist or the big news story. It's about us. It's about all of us, because we all have some responsibility in shaping that culture. And the flip side of that idea is that we have power to shape the culture too in a positive way. So when we take the time to think more critically about our language, our habits, the things that we've ingested over the years, we can really, really shift things. I mean, shout out to all the high schoolers in the room who I see doing that work every day. But there's something that we can all do. And so what we actually we don't want to just talk at you the whole time. We're going to do a quick little activity. On your card, at your table, these black cards, if you open it up, the inside has some blank space for writing. And I'm gonna ask you just to take 1 minute. And you're not gonna have to stand up and read a poem that you wrote for the whole room, nothing like that. Just take 1 minute to address this question. What are at least 3 things you think of when you hear the phrase man up or act like a man? What are 3 qualities or adjectives or rules that pop into your head? Right, so just take 1 minute to jot down a few thoughts. Just got a couple more seconds if you want to finish up a thought you might be having. And so, what we'd ask you to do now, because one of the takeaways from today is how important it is to have open-minded dialogue with each other in our communities. What we want to give you is 3 minutes at your tables to talk to each other about what you wrote down. If you each want to share one thing that you wrote, or you just want to see if there are any common threads or things that you had in common, take 3 minutes to just have a conversation with each other about this. steal this orange juice. About another 30 seconds or so. So, as we begin to come back together, I think it's worth noting that in this room, I think what's really valuable about this space is how there are so many people in this room who've been doing this work for years and years and years. Then there are other people in this room who've maybe never had this conversation before. Like, that's a very, very beautiful and valuable thing. And so I thank you all for your conversation. We're going to change it around a little bit now. If you see on the front of the folder, there's a box. It says awaiting instructions, man box versus healthy manhood. So we're going to kind of do a mirror version of this activity. First, take 1 minute to, again, in the blank space in your folder, write down a couple of phrases or words or ideas that you think of when you hear the phrase healthy manhood. What does that mean? What does that look like? So take 1 minute just to do that on your own. All right, if you want to start to finish up having any thoughts that you might be having. And then we're going to do the same thing. Take 3 minutes at your table to kind of compare and contrast what you said about what it means to embody healthy manhood. So you have 3 minutes to have a conversation about that. Just take another 15 seconds or so. So as we start to come back together, I hope you're having engaging conversations. There's a few things to think about as we come back together, right? So how were your two lists different? Both in terms of the list that you made, but also in terms of at each other's tables, right? There might have been some overlap between the first list and the second list. That's okay. But I think this larger question of why is what we think of as healthy manhood different from what we think of as like be a man and man up. When we teach our sons, for example, to act like a man, what are we really telling them? You know, as a poet, when Voices of Men said, like, look at that word act. Is it an act? Are we acting, or are we who we are authentically? Shannon, who some of you know, one of the organizers at Voices of Men, has done this same exercise hundreds of times with groups of people from all age groups, all genders, all walks of life. And you may imagine the answers that Shannon gets to these questions are almost always the same. For example, this is what a group of 90 ninth graders at Appleton North said when doing the same activity. The idea being that acting like a man or manning up is don't cry, no emotions, you can't ever have emotions except anger, fight, be tough, sports and guns, don't ask for help, don't wear pink, eat meat, don't be quote unquote whipped, no fear, drink beer, dominate, straight. It's like a poem. Head of household, in charge, drive trucks, no long hair, good with tools, ladies man, right? And so some of you may have had similar things on your list. The second one here on healthy manhood, and these are ninth graders, right? Able to cry and show emotions, loving, not afraid to fail, music and theater, and not just sports. So again, not that sports are bad, but not just sports, right? Don't treat women like property, drive a minivan, care about others, honorable, good listener, selfless, loyal, stay-at-home dad, listen to women, gentle, able. I'm gonna say, I don't think it's drive a minivan, I think it's the freedom to drive a minivan if you want to, right? Humble, humility, not being all about money, willing to show a feminine side, helping those in need. And so the stuff that pops up in the first group is what we call, the man box. And it's important to note that the stuff in that box isn't always all bad, right? Like, driving a truck and being good with tools and liking sports, those aren't bad things necessarily. It's the idea that being stuck in the box, of having the box be your only option to be who you are, and like just uncritically accepting everything about the box and ridiculing everything that's at all outside the box, that's harmful. It's harmful to people of all genders. So just a couple of specific examples of that, right? The stuff that pops up in that man box conversation usually kind of breaks down into three basic categories. And again, you probably had some of this in your table conversations. One is that men are robots, and you can't ever show any emotions except potentially anger. No crying, no talking to your friends about what you're going through and how you feel. And of course, when we don't express our emotions, it doesn't mean that we don't have them. They're just bottled up, right? And when you bottle it up, it eventually explodes out, potentially hurting the people that you care the most about. The second one, that men are tough. And again, strength can be a good thing, right? But at what point does strength become a need to always be dominant, to always be in control of the situation, never acknowledging our own fear, never showing weakness, never asking for help? An example of how this plays out is I work with college students, right? And the single most biggest factor that differentiates college students who thrive versus those who struggle and ultimately drop out tends to be the ability to ask for help. So when we're sending young men off to college with the idea that a real man just mans up and handles his business and doesn't ask for help, we're setting them up for failure. And then finally, the third point here, that this is a more subtle one, but the idea that men are kind of the default, that we devalue anything that is feminine, the idea that acting like a girl is always something that's bad, can't wear pink, can't play with dolls, et cetera, et cetera. And look, this point definitely hurts boys and men who may not be able to, authentically express themselves. But think about how it hurts women or anyone who doesn't conform to that box, right? How it leads to violence against women. I want to share just one more poem here before we move on to a conversation about So what can we do about all this? I want to share a poem that tries to make some of these connections between the little things, our little habits, our little things that we never think about, little language things, and these larger realities of violence. So the weirdest thing about having your hand crushed, right, is that the pair of eyes across from yours never stop smiling. As knuckles are compressed, as the skin is all but torn off the top of your hand, he always has this grin on his face. Even as the vein bulges from his neck, he smiles until you grudgingly mumble, "That's quite a handshake, man." Now, as a young man, I was taught that one's masculinity is tied directly to one's handshake. That when meeting another man for the first time, no sin was more unforgivable than placing a fish in his hand, the dead husk of a greeting. Your grip must be firm, right? Like the way you hold your briefcase when you walk to work, or the way you, hold the handle while standing up on the bus. Fine. Some men, however, prefer a grip like a battle axe mid-swing, like ripping the head off an antelope by tugging on the antlers. Some men treat every handshake as a gladiator's death match, a test of strength, a test of will. And when I meet these men, as I weirdly often do, their tectonic plate handshakes never fail to illuminate my many insecurities. Frozen there with purple fingertips, I'm reminded of the fact that I cannot stand the taste of beer. That I don't know anything about cars, that they confuse and frighten me, that I always skip leg day at the gym, that when faced with a barbecue and a pair of tongs, I am going to overcook the meat every time these men attempt to squeeze the testosterone from my body. And yeah, maybe I'm just insecure. But studying his smirk more closely, I wonder if maybe that would make two of us. Because as he wrings the color from my fingertips, I find myself wanting to ask him, do you ever feel trapped? Like, in the mornings when you're watching TV or whatever and downing that protein shake made from raw eggs and liquefied steak and Axe body spray, do you ever crush the glass between your fingers by accident? Do you ever get tired of that voice in the back of your head? You know, the one that sounds just like Dennis Leary, telling you to constantly, every day, reaffirm that you are a real man by catcalling women and eating enormous hamburgers and getting into physical altercations over trivial nonsense and, squeezing things really, really hard. I find myself wanting to ask him, do you hold your wife's arm like this when you're angry with her? Is there a teddy bear somewhere in your history being ripped away from a pair of hands that just aren't strong enough? Do you remember the first time your father wouldn't let you hold his hand when you crossed the street? Do you remember the way he looked at you? Do you remember being handed your firstborn son and not knowing how to hold him? Do you remember squeezing his shoulders like this the first time he disappointed you? Do you remember what it was you were trying to hold on to? And I know that there is so much space between us as men that sometimes we just feel compelled to cram as much physical contact as we can into every touch. We've become so comfortable with crushing, so hypnotized by our own strength, we forget how incredible it can feel to let go. Thank you. So how do we let go? This breakfast is set up to where we can talk about the problems, but we can also talk about what we can do about it, right? How do we change things? Because, it's not just about coming to the breakfast once every year and patting ourselves on the back, right? How do we make our values and our principles live in the world? So what we're going to see next are some examples of actions that people in this community have taken and are taking to begin to move in a healthier direction. And we highlight them not at all to say, look at these incredible heroes. I think it's actually the opposite. It's to say that this is everyone's work, right? Women have been doing this work for years. And I think one good question to think about today is how can men contribute to that? How can people of all gender identities work together in solidarity with each other to shift this culture? So yeah.
My name is Christopher Gold, and for the past 6 years, as an Appleton-based musician, I have been curating and performing at a concert toy drive that benefits Harbor House, which is the local domestic abuse shelter. We've collected over 10,000 toys for the kids and raised thousands of dollars to help sort of offset the day-to-day operating costs of the shelter. And one of the cool things about the way the toy drive works is the kids at the shelter don't know that we do it. The toys are put in a room, and then the mothers get to select the toys specifically for their kids, and then the toy comes from the mom in the situation, which goes a long way to sort of starting to repair a stressed and fractured relationship between the two of them. And we've had over 15 musicians donate their time. Nobody has ever gotten paid to do it. We've never spent a dime doing the event. So 100% of the money and the toys we've collected have gone straight to Harbor House, and we plan on doing it again this year and many, many years into the future.
I'm Stacy Cicero, Executive Director of Safe Haven Domestic Abuse and Sexual Assault Support Center in Shawano.
And I'm Phil Holler, Manager for the Emergency Department at Theta Care Shawano Hospital.
A small group of people from Shawano attended the 2015 Voices of Men breakfast and were inspired to mobilize the men in our community. A small group formed shortly of both men and women who truly wanted to make a difference in our community. With the help of the Voices of Men coordinator of the Fox Valley, we've been able to grow our group.
Certainly at the Emergency Department at Shawano Hospital, we see the devastating effects that domestic violence has on its victims as well as its families. Also as a father, I wanted to get involved just to learn more through Voices of Men and to be a better role model for my children as well as future generations.
Hi, my name is Charlie Louders, and I'm an IT director in Appleton. In my spare time, I work as a volunteer for Voices of Men.
Hi, my name is Kabao Bang, and I'm the office manager at Harbor House, and I provide administrative and technical support.
As a member of Voices of Men, every minute that we spend working to plan, strategize, and implement technology solutions is a minute that all the caseworkers have to actually spend on their regular responsibilities.
What I really appreciate from the IT Friends team is really to be able to hear their experiences, their skills, being able to get some tips, and really learning about what is best practice.
Every organization we serve uses technology to help make themselves more efficient, whether it be sending emails, reviewing license agreements, or otherwise like providing administrative support. Many of these organizations don't have dedicated technical staff that can actually help with these responsibilities.
What I really appreciate from the team is really having the opportunity to hear their experiences, know about what their skill levels are, and being able to really learn about what is best practice for our organization.
By being able to provide technical support, I have my special way of giving back to our partners.
Hello, I'm Nick. I'm a victim advocate at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center in Appleton, whereas the Voices of Men project is very proactive in the fight against domestic abuse, just things that perpetuate a negative culture. Unfortunately, there's also a need for a reactive side to the fight against domestic violence and abuse, and that's where the Sexual Assault Crisis Center comes in Appleton. So if there's ever a need for a victim advocate who prefers a male as their advocate, that's where I come in. And I kind of got involved in the project when a friend brought up to me that men aren't sexually assaulted as often as women, and kind of downplayed the significance of it. But for the victims, it's very real, it's very personal, very tragic moment. And that really inspired me to get involved.
Can we actually just make some noise for everyone in this room who does this work every day and show some appreciation? Yeah. And those are just a few examples, right? And I think it's important to note that some actions are big. You know, you quit your job and become a full-time advocate, or you donate $50,000 to the local, rape crisis center. That's great. You should do that. But it's not just about those big actions, right? It's about how we integrate this work into our everyday lives, into our daily routines. It can be as simple as the conversations that we have or don't have. And so I'm going to share one last poem that, for me, is about this question of action and what we do. I'll share this as a poem about sexual assault, but I think more specifically, it's a poem about the importance of men talking to other men about sexual assault and rape culture in like a preemptive, proactive way. Which is not to say that men are always the perpetrators, that men can't be victims. It's just to say that statistically it's important for those of us who identify as men to bring these conversations not just in this space, but to bring them into other spaces that we have access to. Because those small things, just having a conversation, just interrupting a sexist joke, those little things have enormous ripple effects. And our silence has enormous ripple effects too. There is a conversation that never happened. Not even a deleted scene, more like an entire storyboard lost, an idea cut from the first draft. You are co-starring, slouch on the futon while we watch the game, telling me about your new girlfriend. Or more specifically, telling me about all the things you're going to do to your new girlfriend. Action. And part of me still remembers my lines, even though I never said them. The conversation I just couldn't start for fear of what? Awkwardness? Or damaging our friendship, but maybe just because the commercials were over. That one tiny gesture that might not have changed anything, but might have. I remember how I never put my drink down, never muted the TV, and never said, man, the way you talk about her, the way I've seen you treat her sometimes, your hands are getting too big for your heart. I can smell the future you on your breath. She isn't safe with you. And now it's 2 weeks later, and we're standing in my kitchen, that same silence between us. See, she didn't want to press charges, so you are a convict with sledgehammer hands and no boulders to break them on, and I am just remembering how we used to play football together. Right, numbers 55 and 56, both inside linebackers. I am remembering the dozens of conversations that never happened, the words oversleeping in the bed of my lungs. I am the least important person in this story, and part of me wants to believe that you wouldn't have listened anyway, that some evil spirit whispered itself into your skull. Part of me wants to believe that we didn't grow up 3 blocks from each other, that our eyes aren't the same color. Part of me is always repeating those lines, always reshooting that scene, always reminding myself that despite this guilt, I'm not a bad guy. And you tell me that she never said no, that you're sorry, that you're not a bad guy. Rape culture is silence. It is being able to see the future and not doing anything about it. It is believing the fairy tale platitude that there are good people and bad people, and that as long as you're not one of the bad people, your job is done. Your conscience is clear. It is all of us swimming through the same polluted waters of what? Beer commercials policing masculinity, and stand-up comedians making rape jokes to sound edgy, and media talking heads blaming the victim, and music turning women into objects, and language encouraging us to think of sex as violence, bang, hit, smash. It is telling our daughters to dress sensibly and not walk alone at night, and telling our sons it is a conversation that never happened. And this is not an excuse for you. It is a reminder for me that while her silence will always mean no, my silence, the silence between us, will always mean yes. So again, just the idea that small things matter. You may have seen the posters that Voices of Men put together last year, I think, highlighting 11 things that men can do. Because this conversation, let's be honest, can be difficult for many of us, including myself. Like, what do we actually do about all these problems, right? And so the posters, which are in both English and Spanish, talk about 11 different things that men can do, and feel free to take them and put them up in your workplace or place of worship or wherever people might see them. But this year, we wanted to get even more specific, because that's really good advice, but it's big, right? And so this year, the organization worked to put together, at your tables, you have these little bags, and inside are these little zines, which is, I know, a very generationally specific term. If you're too young or you're older, you may not have ever heard that word, but a zine is basically like a little magazine, right? And the idea of a zine culturally is that they're put together in a way where they're easy to replicate. They're easy just to make a million copies of and spread them out everywhere. They're not super polished or whatever. But it's the content of them which is important, right? There are some 50 things in here, just ideas, action ideas, things that men, and not just men, but I think specifically aimed at men, can do to make a difference. These are simple, concrete things. It also has Voices of Men website on the back, which, as someone who's been doing this work for a long time, it's one of the best websites I've seen in the country in terms of sharing resources. So if a conversation is hard for you to have, maybe you share one of their videos on your Facebook feed or send it to a friend or something like that. That can be a useful thing. So please feel free to take these, and there are more copies too if people want to take a few. And I would just say, because this is very much a local effort, let's hear from a few more local voices about the work that is going on right here.
Hi, I'm Blake Evan.
And I'm Paul Williams, and we're with Badger Boy State. Badger Boy State is a civic leadership program for young men entering their senior year of high school, and it's put on by the American Legion. Badger Boy State really focuses for those guys to learn about how their government works, communication and leadership skills, and making great friends along the way. In 2015, I saw Blake up on stage, who was a part of Badger Boy State, and I said, Blake, we've got to get the Man Box and Voices of Men presentation at Boy State.
One key element that we noticed that was missing from the Boy State program was a focus on emotional intelligence. So we decided to craft a message to present to over 900 high school students from around the state of Wisconsin, over 200 adult facilitators that were a part of the Boy State program, on the importance of stepping outside of the man box. And while we were crafting that message, a message that we learned from Voices of Men, we shared how important it is to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, both as people in the audience, as well as the facilitators presenting the message.
As I walked around Ripon College later that evening, I heard young men crying with one another, laughing with one another, encouraging and applauding with one another. And that really showed me that healthy masculinity was now a part of their definition of brotherhood.
The Voices of Men breakfast is more than an awareness event. This is a call to action, and this is the start of a conversation. That's what makes the Voices of Men breakfast so powerful to those who attend.
Hello, my name is Joe Nicholson, and I'm Captain America. I've been volunteering at the Harbor House for a little over a year now with a program called Harbor Heroes. Harbor Heroes is a child care program staffed by volunteers from Hortonville High School who go dressed up as heroes. The Harbor Heroes program was set up by me as my Eagle Scout project. In the program, I have seen a massive effect on the volunteers and on the children. I have seen children go from stealing each other's toys and bullying to being so proud of themselves for talking out their issues that they go and tell the heroes about it. The effect on the volunteers has been awesome too. I have seen them grow and mature and establish bonds with the children in ways I never could have imagined.
My name is Jay Stofflet, and in 2015, my friend and former Christine Ann board president, Jeremy Monette, passed away tragically. He was so beloved by so many people in the community. We decided to hold an event to celebrate his life, And we used the money from that event to fulfill one of his dreams to build a playground at the shelter for Christine Ann so that kids of all ages and all abilities would have a place to escape for a little bit and forget about the troubles and just be a kid. At this playground, we've got a tree house, we've got a court where kids can bounce balls, we've got all different aspects that can just help them realize that maybe the world around them isn't such a terrible place. Matter of fact, we were putting together an airplane teeter-totter because Jeremy was a pilot, he'd want an airplane there. And we were putting this together and there were kids watching us do this, and when we got done, they were just all over and they were so happy playing with it. And looking at them playing with it, we realized that we had really left behind something that we knew Jeremy would be proud of.
So the last, yes. So the last time I was up here, I left you kind of on a bad note. I was in the lawyer's office, and the lawyers were telling me that there was nothing I could do about my own personal case. What I didn't tell you is that the lawyer then said, but if you wanted to help change a law, we would help you with that. This month is the 3rd year anniversary of me coming forward with my story. I have participated in 3 legislative sessions in my state of Oregon, and I have helped champion and pass 7 laws in my state. I have, thank you. Thank you, I really appreciate that. I've helped to extend the statute of limitations. I've helped create a rape kit bill that required mandated testing of our 5,000 backlogged kits and future testing. I've created some bills around campuses and our universities. Legislative work is a huge part of my life, and I will continue to do so. And what I want to say about that is that I am an average, regular citizen, just like you. I just have a passion, and I found someone at my state capitol that wanted to listen and had the same passion. You literally can do what I have done. The other thing I do is I sit on the NCAA Commission to Combat Sexual Violence. I work with the NCAA to make sure that our athletes and our athletic programs are using their power and their influence and their stage and their megaphone to change things on our campuses and hopefully also inspire change across our country. There's really nothing bigger in our country than sports. The other thing I do is I speak. I travel the country and I speak. That started because, do you remember Coach Riley from Nebraska? He said some pretty mean things about me. These are good guys that made a bad choice. Well, I went to Nebraska, and I met Coach Riley. I sat down with him in his office for an hour and a half, and I told him how his words affected me. I literally told him how I had hated him for 16 years. And Coach Riley gave me a gift, and that gift is called accountability. Coach Riley allowed me to say every single thing I needed to say to him. And he didn't defend himself. He didn't try to make any excuses. He didn't try to rationalize anything. He apologized. And he held himself accountable and responsible for his part in my life. And through that accountability, I found forgiveness. And what I want you to know about forgiveness is it's not always for the person that hurt you, it's for you. Forgiveness was for me in that moment so that I could move on. That story went viral, and I've been to over 50 schools in the last year and a half. And I work with mostly men. And I'll tell you why I mostly work with men. Because I recognize that the vast majority of sexual violence is carried out by men. This is a men's issue, it's not a women's issue. If women could stop sexual violence, we would have already done it. I wouldn't be here. I also know that it's about 10% approximately of our male population committing these crimes, which means that 90% of our men are good. It's just that they're too quiet. So I travel the country and I work with men, the 90%, the good men that wouldn't commit these crimes, and I ask them to get engaged, and I ask them to stand up, and I ask them to check the 10%. I ask them to have conversations with each other. My only intention is to inspire and to engage men and ask them to align themselves with women like me and other women who have been doing this work for so long. And that's what I'm doing here in Wisconsin. This week, I will be at several different locations. There are several public sessions I'll be doing. Wednesday, at noon, I'll be at UW Fox Valley. Thursday, 11:30, I will be at Fox Valley Technical College. 6:30 that evening, I'll be at Appleton West Auditorium. These are all open to the public if you'd like to come. I would love to see you. I'll tell you more about my story and the work that I'm doing. One of the things we'll be doing while I'm at these sessions is you all have a pledge under your plate. It's called Set the Expectation. This is my campaign. I started it in April of this year. And the reason I started it because I was traveling the country and working with all these different athletic programs and coaches, and what I realized is that we had some men and coaches who were setting the expectation for our young men and boys. The sexual assault, physical violence, and relationship violence are never okay. And then we had some men and coaches that weren't setting the expectation. They weren't even having the conversation. And my question was, how do we expect our young men and boys to reach your expectation if you don't first set it? And so I thought, what can I do? How can I get everyone on the same page? And I thought, well, what about a pledge? What if I ask people to make a commitment? And then I thought, well, what do I call it? And I thought, well, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? What I'm trying to accomplish is can we first just set the expectation? Could we just make it that simple? And today, as you have that pledge, what I'm going to ask is if there's any man in here that is willing to set the expectation, I would ask that you, in a minute, not yet, stand. And by you standing, you then give permission to another man to stand and set the expectation, and another, and another, and another, and another. And this is how a culture changes, is by each of us giving each other permission to set the expectation. I'm going to call up Shannon Kenevin. He is the Voices of Men community engagement leader. I think it's important that a man lead the pledge. So he is going to read the pledge to us. And if I could have that one man who is willing, and if you are able to stand, willing to set the expectation and say the pledge with us, if you could please stand.
And we're just going to read the all caps lines of the pledge. Those who are willing, read them with me. I pledge to display courage and stand up against sexism and all forms of sexual and relationship violence. Should I choose to engage in sexual activity with another person, I pledge to obtain ongoing affirmative consent. I pledge to support survivors of sexual and relationship violence. I pledge to be a leader in both words and actions, and I will do my part to prevent a culture of violence at my school, workplace, and my community. I pledge to set the expectation that sexual and relationship violence are never okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dean Gruner. I happen to be a husband, father of 3 kids that are all in their 30s, and I've got 5 grandkids. When I listened to this morning, I long for a day where we stop using the term man up, we start talking about, why don't you love like a man? That would be a wonderful world, a safe world for my grandkids to be born and raised in. We've been focusing a lot on healthy manhood and taking action. The 11 Things posters offer specific actions. The zines, a new term I learned, are full of actions. Committing and establishing the committing to the pledge is another action. Now we'd like to ask you to fill out action cards and consider other actions you might take. Please everyone take out your name badge, turn it over. If you're willing, check an action and print neatly your email address and leave the card in the bag on the table that the zines were in. Also, put the plastic name badge in there and we'll recycle that.
And my name is Kevin Mason. I choose to volunteer with Voices of Men because I really believe in the power of dismantling our culture of toxic masculinity. I see it as a central part of the work toward a healthier, safer, and more accepting world. And I personally work to live the values we're talking about this morning in every area of my life.
While you're filling out those action cards, we want to take a minute to announce all of our sponsors one at a time. Please hold your applause to the end, but as we announce your company, would you please stand up and remain standing until I've announced all the sponsors. Amazing Events, Appleton Medical Center, Appleton Emergency Physicians, Appleton Area School District, Aptheon, Associated Benefits and Risk Consulting, Atlas Pro AV, AVM, ASCO, Baker Tilly, Bassett Mechanical, Bergstrom Corporation, BMO Harris, The Bolt Company, Capital Credit Union, Castle Pierce, Champion Video, Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, Community First Credit Union, Community Foundation for the Fox Valley Region, End Abuse Wisconsin, Faith Technologies, Fox Communities Credit Union, Fox Valley Emergency Medicine, Fox Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, FVTC Foundation, Galloway Company, Godfrey & Kahn, Great Northern Corporation, Green Bay Packaging, Green Bay Packers Give Back, Hoffman Planning, Design and Construction, Humana, Huntington Bank, Infinity Healthcare, Kimberly-Clark Corporation, Lawrence University, Menasha Corporation, Miller Electric, Myron Construction Company, Nina Foundry, Oshkosh Corporation, Pierce Manufacturing, Plexus, Schenck, Schreiber Foods, Secura Insurance Companies, St. Norbert College, Stellar Blue Technologies, ThetaCare, Thrivent Financial, United Way Fox Cities, Urban Evolutions, U.S. Bank, U.S. Venture, Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Women's Fund for the Fox Valley Region, and Woodward Communications. Thank you to all our sponsors.
And I'd also like to thank our volunteer breakfast planning teams and the Voices of Men leadership team, as well as all those on stage this morning, and along with Goodwill NCW, the umbrella organization for Voices of Men. Can you please stand now? And a special thank you to the Community Health Action Team from ThetaCare, also known as CHAT, and to the Bright Ideas Fund from the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for funding Brenda Tracy's entire week with us so that she can visit 2 high schools and 4 colleges at no direct cost to those schools. Thank you. And lastly, but most importantly, an especially heartfelt thank you to the sexual assault and domestic violence agencies and their staff who do this important work day in and day out. Christine Ann Domestic Abuse Services, Harbor House, Reach Counseling, Sexual Assault Crisis Center. They founded Voices of Men, they lead and teach us every day, and they do life-saving work for so many across our community. Agency staff, please stand now. And in keeping with our tradition of inviting women to have the first and last word within our work, I'd like to invite Beth Schnorr from Harbor House and Beth Oswald from Christine Ann to the stage.
Good morning. I'm Beth Oswald with Christine Ann Domestic Abuse Services.
I'm Beth Schnorr from Harbor House.
Together, Harbor House and Christine Ann Domestic Abuse Services answer over 50 crisis calls every single day. This year, we will provide 800 women and children safe shelter, and we will serve over 2,300 more in outpatient services. And within the last 2 months, we lost 2 women from our community, Annie Ford and Corey Cummings. These were women in our community. They were trying to leave their abusive relationships. Both were murdered by their male intimate partners. And this is not new to us. We have been here before all too often. Your presence here today means something. It's a start that we are asking you to be accountable to. Women deal with sexism and lack of safety every single day. And for women of color, they carry that burden on top of the racism they already experience. We need you to step up every day to help change our culture. It cannot be done without you. So we ask you first to allow the information that you heard today to sink in. Let it enter your hearts. Let yourself feel the emotions that it evokes in you, and allow those emotions to impact your actions. Notice the silence between you. Notice the silence between us. Take inspiration from the survivors that are around you, survivors like Brenda. And take action in some way. Look over the zine and pick out one or all of the actions in that publication. Grab some of our 11 things posters when you leave. Put them up in your schools, your workplaces, your faith organizations, and start a conversation about even one of them or all of them. Visit our agency booths out in the hallway before you leave and consider getting involved. Your efforts as allies in this work is needed now more than ever before.
We know this morning there are about 1,000 people watching the live stream today. Last year, the individuals watching the live streaming helped launch Voices of Men efforts in 3 different cities, La Crosse, Shawano, and Marinette. If you're watching today, we hope you'll consider starting an effort in your area. You can reach out to us at voicesofmen.com. We understand that some of you may need to leave today, but if you're able to stay, Brenda and Guante will be up here doing a Q&A, kind of up here by the podium, from 9:30 to 10. We'd love to have you stay for that. The 4 agencies that you've met today that came together to start Voices of Men all recognize that men can be victims, and all of the agencies serve any individual that's been affected by domestic violence or sexual assault. It does take a great deal of courage for these survivors to come forward and tell their story. But by you being here today and standing and to take the pledge, you're showing survivors that they're not alone. Thank you.
Write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me down in the very dirt, but still like the dust I'll rise. Does my happiness upset you, yeah? Or are you best with gloom? 'cause I laugh like I forgot and know you well. Bumping in my living room. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. But I'll rise, yeah, I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise. Out from the shacks of history and shame, up from a past rooted in pain. But I'll rise, yeah, I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise.
Now did you wanna see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my confidence upset you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I walk like I've got a diamond mine, breaking up in my backyard. So you may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, but I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, 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 out of the shacks of history's shame, up from a past rooted in pain. I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, rise, rise.
Said I'm just trying to make it straight 'cause it's sideways. I'm trying to bring water to a dry place. I wanna bring hope where it ain't none. I wanna bring low to a high place. I wanna make the shooter put the gun down, so a mother get to hold her son now. I wanna make the lame man run again, yeah, and make the blind man see the sun again. But all of his bang bang, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't think the pirates really want that. Yeah, they breathing down my neck, always on my back. Hey, they breathing down my neck, always on my back. Hey, they breathing down my neck, always on my back. Yeah, they breathing down my neck, always on my back. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you may shoot me with your words,
you may
cut me with your eyes,
but I'll rise,
I'll rise,
I'll rise,
I'll rise, I'll rise, out of the shacks of history's shame, up from a past rooted in pain. I'll rise,
I'll rise,
I'll rise,
I'll rise,
I'll rise,
Real quick, that was Mauranda, Bernard, and Neil, all students at Lawrence University. One more time, please. Yeah, I threw mine away. But I don't know how many people I got.
You can look to the stars in search of the answers. Look for God and life and distant planets. Have your faith in